Coronation Street for Thursday 24 teases that the quiet streets of Weatherfield could soon echo with disturbing revelations, as young Sam begins to crumble under the weight of unresolved traumas and fresh betrayals. What starts as a harmless schoolyard prank gradually spirals into doubt, fear and emotional turmoil, setting the stage for a series of intertwining tragedies that threaten to tear apart relationships and expose long-hidden vulnerabilities. It began with a poster. Lily had spent hours working on a colorful presentation for a school project, proudly pinning it on the classroom wall. But the next day, she was furious to discover Sam had commented that her ideas were basic and suggested it could be improved. To Lily, this was mockery, public humiliation from a boy already hailed for his brilliance and maturity. But to Sam, it was merely an honest suggestion, void of malice. Yet his words planted a bitter seed. Sam had always been different. The tragic death of his mother Natasha left a permanent scar that never fully healed. Though he carried on, immersing himself in books and science, the wound beneath the surface remained. Sam struggled to process his emotions like other kids. He observed, he thought, but rarely shared. That made him a prime target for Lily, whose confident, outspoken personality was the opposite of his withdrawn nature. Her prank, sabotaging one of his projects, was intended to make a point. She didn't expect the fallout to spiral out of control. Nick noticed the change in Sam almost immediately. His son became quieter, more withdrawn. His smiles were more forced, his silences deeper. The household felt heavier. As Nick grappled with the helplessness of seeing his son in pain again, Toya stepped in. She had always had a soft spot for Sam, and, sensing the emotional distance widening, began to gently reach out. Toya invited Sam to spend time at the cafe, pretending to need help with books or ask for his thoughts on news articles. Slowly, cautiously, Sam began to respond. He listened. He stayed. He even smiled faintly on a few occasions. It took time, but the trust started to build. One afternoon, as golden sunlight filtered through the cafe windows, Toya managed to gently coax the truth from Sam. He opened up about Lily's prank. At first, his voice was hesitant, but as Toya offered quiet affirmations, the words flowed more freely. Sam explained that he never meant to upset Lily. He thought her poster was good, but he had ideas to make it better. To him, it was collaboration. To Lily, it was an insult. Then came the twist. Toya carefully mentioned the incident that had shaken the street. Lily's house had been broken into. She asked gently if Sam had heard anything. The air between them grew tense. Sam's expression darkened for a moment, then steadied. He told Toya he had nothing to do with it. Yes, he had joked at school about all the recent break-ins, and yes, Lily had overheard, but it was just a joke. A poorly timed one, he admitted. He went further, suggesting that Lily might have misunderstood his intentions. He theorized that she might be jealous of his academic success, of how adults seemed to trust and praise him. That jealousy, he believed, turned into resentment. "I don't think she wants to be friends," he said quietly. "I think she just wants to win." Toya listened, deeply troubled by how much hurt had built up in such a small boy. She made a mental note to talk to Nick again, to see if the school could step in, not to punish Lily, but to mediate. But things took a sharper turn. Lily continued to insist that Sam's comments at school were a clue, that he knew about the break-in ahead of time. She told her friends that Sam was acting weird and probably hiding something. The rumor spread. Soon, whispers followed Sam in the corridor. His locker was defaced with marker pens. A book he left in the library was found torn. Nick was livid when he found out, and marched straight to the school. Toya joined him, advocating for Sam, but the damage had begun. Sam was shaken. His trust in people, slowly rebuilt since his mother's death, was now faltering once more. As the neighborhood buzzed with gossip, another thread began to unravel. Oddie, recently seen making expensive orders online and boasting about a mystery investment, was growing increasingly agitated. Brody, his longtime mate with a tendency to cut corners, had been hanging around more often than usual. There were whispers in the kebab shop of Oddie needing money, fast. A claim about a botched delivery turned into a tale about an insurance scam gone wrong. And then, almost too conveniently, the news of Lily's house being broken into spread. Brody and Oddie had laughed it off at the rover's return, calling it bad luck for David and Shona. But behind their chuckles, Toya, watching from across the room, noticed Oddie's nervous fingers tapping the glass too hard, Brody's smirk a little too forced. Something wasn't right. It was Nina who first confided in Toya that Oddie might be in more trouble than he was letting on. She had overheard an argument between him and Brody outside the back of the salon, voices raised, money mentioned, and the phrase Plan B muttered under breath. The timing lined up too closely with the night of the break-in at Lily's. Was it possible that Oddie had broken into the house, not to scare, but to grab something to fence? Could Brody have helped? Could this have all been a cover for a quick score that went wrong? And if so, why let Sam take the fall? As Toya tried to piece together the puzzle, Sam quietly retreated further into himself. The boy who had once fought through silence to deliver speeches about the solar system now barely spoke in class. The light that once shone in his eyes dimmed. And Lily, emboldened by others' validation, continued her accusations. But something didn't add up. No thief would joke about a crime they were planning. No criminal would announce their guilt in a schoolyard. Toya knew this. Nick knew this. Even some teachers began to raise eyebrows at Lily's unshaken certainty. And so the question loomed, if not Sam, then who? Toya became more determined. The accusations against Sam had gone far enough, and with every whisper that passed through the school gates, his sense of safety diminished. She had seen how the world had failed this child before, and she wasn't about to let it happen again. Her mind kept circling back to Oddie and Brody, the way their voices cracked behind forced laughter, the fear buried under their bravado. Late one evening, Toya approached Nick. They sat quietly in the kitchen, steam rising from forgotten mugs of tea. Toya explained her suspicions, not just about Lily's misunderstanding, but about Oddie possibly being behind the break-in. Nick, initially stunned, didn't want to believe it. Oddie had always seemed like a decent lad, impulsive maybe, but not dangerous. Yet the more Toya outlined the facts, the mounting bills, the failed insurance scam, the tension between Oddie and Brody, the more the pieces clicked together. Nick's protective instincts kicked in. He couldn't confront Oddie without proof, but he could keep a closer watch. He decided to talk to David, carefully, without triggering more chaos. Meanwhile, Toya decided to speak to Sam again. This time, Sam was sitting in the park, legs tucked up, notebook in hand. He was sketching orbital trajectories, his coping mechanism when the world felt too heavy. Toya sat beside him without speaking. After a while, Sam whispered, "I think I'm making it worse. Everyone looks at me like I'm broken." Toya reassured him softly. "You're not broken, Sam. You're brave. Sometimes the world doesn't understand how much strength it takes just to speak." He nodded but didn't look at her. "I don't want Lily to hate me. I don't want anyone to hate me." It broke her heart. Across the street, Lily was having her own crisis. The more people began to doubt her claims, the more defensive she became. She wasn't used to being questioned. For so long, she had been sharp, quick-witted, always one step ahead. But this time, it wasn't working. Her friends were starting to pull away, not because they believed Sam over her, but because her anger had begun to turn sour. She lashed out in class, snapped at home, and started skipping her lunch to avoid uncomfortable stares. She didn't want to admit it, but a part of her wondered if she had pushed too hard. What if Sam had only meant to help? What if her accusations were based on fear, not truth? But pride kept her from stepping back. Meanwhile, Oddie was spiraling. The failed insurance scheme had cost him more than just money. Brody was pressuring him to make up for the loss, hinting at new plans that teetered on the edge of legality. Oddie wanted out, but he felt trapped. When Nick casually mentioned the break-in during a run-in at the cafe, Oddie's response was too rehearsed. His laughter too loud. Nick went to David that night. At first, David brushed it off. Oddie. Nah, he's dumb, but he's not that dumb. But as they talked, a chill settled in. The door hadn't been forced. Someone had known how to get in without leaving a trace. David remembered that Oddie had once house-sat for them while they were away, a fact Nick hadn't known. The coincidence was too strong. Toya took it further. She spoke to Nina again, then quietly to one of the teachers at school. Soon, she gathered more information. Fragments of overheard conversations, the exact timing of Brody and Oddie's visits to the estate, and a stolen item from Lily's house that mysteriously turned up in a pawn shop 2 blocks away. The clerk remembered Brody. The truth was near, and Toya knew they needed to act before Sam was hurt further. Nick arranged a meeting with Oddie, under the pretense of wanting to talk about school. They sat at Speed Dale, the scent of curry thick in the air. Oddie looked tired, the dark circles under his eyes deeper than ever. Nick watched him closely. You've been busy lately, Nick said casually. Heard there was some trouble with a delivery. Oddie's face twitched. He tried to brush it off, but his usual charm had dulled. Then Nick leaned in. I know what happened. Not just the insurance thing. Lily's house. Brody. All of it. Oddie's fork dropped. For a moment, it was all silence. Then came the rush of words. Oddie confessed, not everything, but enough. He said he hadn't meant to scare anyone, that it was supposed to be easy. Brody had convinced him it was harmless, a quick way to fix the money issue. They hadn't known Lily would be home early, hadn't meant to make it personal. But once the heat turned up, they stayed silent. Let the suspicion fall where it may. We thought, no one would believe Sam could do something like that, Oddie muttered, shame thick in his throat. Nick's hands curled into fists. It took everything in him not to explode. Instead, he told Oddie he had 2 choices, come clean or face police intervention. Oddie's face turned pale. Later that week, in the school auditorium during an assembly, the truth came out. Toya had arranged a quiet meeting between the school board and Oddie, alongside Nick and David. Oddie stood, trembling, and admitted what he and Brody had done. The reaction was swift, shock, murmurs, a mix of anger and disbelief. Brody was called in immediately, and suspended pending investigation. Sam, watching from the back, didn't smile. He just lowered his eyes, a quiet weight lifting off his shoulders. The truth was out, but the pain lingered. Lily found him later that day, standing alone near the bike racks. She didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she mumbled, I'm sorry. I think I was wrong about you. Sam looked at her, wary. You didn't believe me. I know. I didn't want to. It was easier to be angry. They stood in silence again. Then Sam nodded. Okay. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe a step. Toya, watching from afar, felt a mix of sadness and hope. The road ahead was still long, for Sam, for Lily, for Oddie. But a little justice had been done. And perhaps now, healing could begin. She sat with Nick that evening again. This time, they didn't speak much. The tea stayed warm. But Sam, upstairs in his room, opened a new notebook. Not about planets this time, but about people and stories and resilience. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the beginning of something stronger. He was learning that even after the darkest nights, morning always came. And in Weatherfield,